Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the following motion standing in my name. Be it resolved that this House adopt the second report of the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives for the third session, 2022-2023. 12th Parliament, on the consideration of proposals for the supplementation and variation of appropriation for the fiscal year 2023. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives met on Friday, the 5th of May, and agreed to proposals with respect to 1. A supplementation of the appropriation for the financial year 2023 in the sum of $3,852,055,829, and a variation of the appropriation in the sum of $100 million to fund urgent and critical recurrent and capital needs to September the 30th, 2023. These proposals are being sought by way of the Finance Supplementation and Variation of Appropriation, Financial Year 2023, Bill 2023. So, Deputy Speaker, the details of the proposed changes were circulated to all members of the Standing Finance Committee and discussed at its meeting on Friday, at which time clarification was sought with respect to some of the proposed changes to the appropriation for financial year 2023. It is instructive to note that responses were given immediately on Friday to some of the issues raised, and a further undertaking was given to supply subsequent responses. Earlier today, I authorized the replies to the various questions that were asked at the Standing Finance Committee on Friday for circulation to members. And I assume that the Parliament circulated these replies. Quite detailed, I must say. At this juncture, let me advise this House that the supplementary appropriation of $3,852,055,829 affects 22 heads of expenditure and comprises recurrent expenditure of $3,496,694,796 and development program expenditure of $355,361,033. Further, the variation of appropriation, which complements this supplementation, affects only recurrent expenditure and involves an increase to one head of expenditure and a decrease to one head of expenditure, namely an increase of $100 million for the Ministry of Works and Transport and a decrease of $100 million for the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Members are advised that the source of funds for the supplementary appropriation will be met from the consolidated fund as well as from loan financing if required. At this point in time, I'm very pleased to announce that the government's overdraft is in very good shape. And unlike the lean years when we in finance looked at the overdraft every single day, we still do, but not in the same way, and became quite anxious when the overdraft hit 90% and 95% and sometimes 99% and so on, meaning that there was only money to run the country for a couple of days. Today, the overdraft is at 39%. And for a few weeks prior was at 35%. So we have available to us another $5 to $6 billion in the overdraft. So we may not need to engage in loan financing. We will if necessary. And let me also debunk statements made by the opposition that it is the government's intention to withdraw money from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. Nothing could be further from the truth. During the debate, the proposals contained in the bill will be addressed by various members of government. Additional funding is required to cover liabilities on hand and to meet expenditure to the end of the fiscal year. The supplementary appropriation of just over $3.8 billion affects the following 22 heads: the President, 01, Auditor General, 02, the Parliament, 05, Service Commissions, 06, Statutory Authorities Service Commission, 07, Office of the Prime Minister, 13, Tobago House of Assembly, 15, Ministry of Finance, 18, Pensions and Gratuities, 20, Ministry of National Security, 22, Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Legal Affairs, 23, Ministry of Education, 26, Ministry of Health, 28, Ministry of Public Utilities, 39, Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, 40, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government, 42, Ministry of Works and Transport, 43, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, 61, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, 64, Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, 65, Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, 78, Ministry of Sport and Community Development, head 79. So all of those numbers are the various heads. The details of the proposed supplementation for the various heads are in the report of the Standing Finance Committee. And as you may recall, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we had quite a long debate. I think I recall leaving here close to 9 o'clock on Friday. And as I said, we gave responses on that day, and we have circulated the balance of responses today. Dealing specifically with the variation of appropriation in the sum of $100 million, this is required to realign the provision in the fiscal accounts in accordance with the new assignment of responsibility to the Minister of Works and Transport for the Secondary Road Rehabilitation and Improvement Company Limited, with effect from the 3rd of March 2023, as published in the Gazette, Volume 62, number 38, dated 13th February 2023. This variation facilitates an increase of $100 million under Head 43, Ministry of Works and Transport, with a commensurate decrease under Head 42, Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I indicated, we had quite a lengthy debate on Friday. We had quite a lengthy discussion, on the supplementation of appropriation. All members will have the documentation with respect to the deliberations in the Standing Finance Committee, and will be aware of the supplementation, for example, the Auditor General in the amount of $1,493,000, the Parliament in the amount of $14,591,000, Service Commissions in the sum of $3,566,000, Tobago House of Assembly in the amount of $100 million, and so on. I don't think I need to belabor the House and repeat the discussion that we had on Friday, or do I need to go into the details of the supplementation, since we had, as far as I can recall, a discussion that lasted at least 7 hours on Friday on every single head, item, and sub-item. I would simply like to draw members' attention again to the fact that the supplementation for Head 18, Ministry of Finance, does not involve any expenditure by the Ministry of Finance per se, and that is a supplementation in the amount of $313,724,596. And that is a supplementation to the Infrastructure Development Fund. And the way the Infrastructure Development Fund works, the appropriation is placed in the Ministry of Finance for distribution to other ministries. So this particular supplementation of $313,724,596 will be distributed in this way. Of that total, Head 26, the Ministry of Education, will receive $105,876,289. And this would be for the development program, because the Infrastructure Development Fund was specifically set up many years ago, 15 years ago or so, to allow state enterprises to carry out work on behalf of ministries, so that the $105 million that will be given as a supplementation to the Ministry of Education through the Infrastructure Development Fund will be for refurbishment, repair, construction work, etc., on schools of various types. The Ministry of Health is receiving from the Ministry of Finance's IDF allocation the sum of additional $78,271,000, and that would be for construction work, payment for Arima Point Fortin hospitals, the new admin building, and so on, San Fernando Teaching Hospital. Head 48 is being supplemented through the Infrastructure Development Fund. Ministry of Trade will receive $9.8 million for the Phoenix Park Industrial Estate project. Head 79, Ministry of Sport and Community Development, is being supplemented in the amount of $103,192,097 for various work, refurbishment work, construction work, such as work at the Hazley Crawford Stadium, Skinner Park, Dwight York Stadium, etc. Head 80, Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, is being supplemented through the Ministry of Finance, Infrastructure Development Fund, in the amount of $16,585,210 to meet outstanding payments for the construction of the Desperados Pan Theatre and the Arapita Avenue Enhancement Project. So I just want to repeat that this supplementation to the Ministry of Finance is really for onward distribution to other ministries. As I said, I don't want to belabor the House and rehash the discussion that we had on Friday. Mr. Deputy Speaker, how much time do I have?
You finish at 3:39.
Thank you, sir. I have 33 minutes. Thank you. Let me give some information now, since we have to look at revenue and expenditure as we go forward in terms of how we're going to fund and allocate funding for the items covered in the report of the Standing Finance Committee. The original estimate of revenue for fiscal 2023 was $56,175.4 million. The budgeted expenditure for fiscal 2023 was $57,684.6 million, which gave an estimated deficit at the time in September of 2022 of $1,509.2 million, which was less than 1% of GDP at the time. The projected revenue now for the year is expected to be somewhere in the region of $1 billion less than original estimates. And expenditure, of course, because we are supplementing the appropriation, will be more. But let me deal with some issues in the public domain, because we have a lot of uninformed people in Trinidad and Tobago who make comments that have no basis in reality, among others, and make up their own data. So let me inform honourable members, and by extension the national community, the actual weighted average prices of local crude and the actual country-weighted average netback prices for natural gas over the 6-month period. And let me start by saying it's a fallacy perpetuated by people who should know better, that when a minister of finance, whether it is me or my predecessors, states an oil price and a gas price in the budget, the oil price is the weighted average price of local crude, and therefore it is not WTI, it is not Brent, or any other international price. It is the actual price estimated, or the price that is estimated for our local crude, and we get crude from all sources. We have different types of crude in Trinidad and Tobago. We have light, sweet crude off our east coast. We have heavier crude on land, and different types of crude in different areas, whether it is shallow water in the western part, whether it is shallow water in the eastern part, and so on. So that I can put into the record that the weighted average local crude oil and condensate price, because condensate is also subject to supplemental petroleum tax. For October, the month in which we debated the budget, it was $93.26. That was a local weighted average country price for crude, a little higher than our budget estimate of $92.50. In November, it dropped to $90.39, weighted average local crude price. December, $76.87. January, $78.62. February, $78.40. March, $73.35. And those of us who follow oil prices will know about the extreme volatility of oil prices. For example, if one was looking at oil prices today, it has reached as high as $77 today. Currently trading at, Brent is currently trading at $76.41, but it reached as high as $77.60 today. A week ago, Brent was below 70. So Brent has changed by 10% in 1 week. So that there is extreme volatility in the oil sector, many different reasons. You have projections of demand. Demand is one of the things that affects oil prices. One looks at the US economy, one looks at the largest economies in the world, United States, China, Europe, and so on, EU region. And traders will make a projection based on demand when they look at the growth in the advanced economies of the world and the consumers of oil. They would make a projection as to what they think the demand for oil will be in the months to come, and then they will look at supply, and oil prices are affected by that. Oil prices are also affected by geopolitical events, most notably the war in Ukraine, but there are other geopolitical events. Oil prices are also affected by the strength of the US dollar, because the United States dollar is the currency that oil prices is benchmarked in. When the US dollar appreciates and strengthens against the yen, against the euro, and so on, that causes oil prices to drop. when it weakens, that causes oil prices to rise. So when I look at the weighted average local crude price for the half year, the average that we have is $81.27, which is just about $11 less than our budget projection. And that has affected the revenue to some extent. However, let's go to the other element of revenue from petroleum, where there is so much misinformation, it's not funny. The netback price for LNG in Trinidad and Tobago in October was a staggering $17.45. Let me repeat that. The netback price for gas in October was a staggering $17.45 for LNG. Domestic netback prices were $7.19. The monthly weighted gas price comparing gas from LNG supply, netback, and gas from local petrochemical industries, the monthly weighted gas price for October of 2022, the first month of the half year, was $11.61. For November, the monthly netback LNG price was $7.00. The domestic price, $6.71. The weighted country gas netback price for that month, November, $6.22. In December, the LNG netback price was $6.99, actually $7. And the domestic gas price was $6.59. And the weighted average, because of volumes, $6.72. January, the LNG netback price, $6.29. Domestic gas price, $6.11. The average for that month, netback, $6.16. February, $5.07 for the LNG netback price. Domestic price, $5.23. Monthly weighted gas price, $5.19. March, as we have seen, there has been a decline in gas prices around the world. $4.15 for LNG, $4.15 for domestic, with a monthly weighted average of $4.12. The end result of all of this is that, taking into account the netback prices for gas from October 22 to March 23, the domestic gas prices for gas October 22 to March 23, the monthly weighted average for the first half of the fiscal year for gas, netback price, $6.98. So therefore, the netback prices we are getting for natural gas the price is better than our budget estimate. So the oil is lower, the gas is higher. And as a result, when one looks at the revenue for the first half of the fiscal year, the revenue projected based on the budget estimates was $28.48 billion. The actual revenue received for the period October 22 to March 23 was $27.4 billion, just $1 billion less. So we're not doing as badly as some people would like the country to believe. And I will explain why we are doing well in a little while. And I think I need to keep hammering home that point that I will make in a little while. But the main areas where we got less revenue than we thought we would, believe it or not, was value-added tax. And the reason is that when we project revenue from value-added tax, which is another thing that many uninformed people do not know, it's a net figure. So the more refunds that we pay out, the lower the net revenue from value-added tax for the year. And we have accelerated the rate of VAT refunds within the last couple of months, so that our net revenue from VAT has been $850 million lower than we thought it would be, because we increased the level of VAT refunds that we plan to give by $800 million. We have been affected by royalties. Royalty is a direct correlation between volume and price, so that if oil prices are lower and if volumes are not as high as we thought they would be, then you will get lower royalties. But I'm very happy to announce that whereas we have received a decrease in VAT revenue, or we have experienced a decrease in VAT revenue, and a decrease in royalties from oil and gas, we have experienced an increase in taxes on incomes and profits from other companies. And other companies also include, and that is a little known fact, that the Inland Revenue Department categorizes companies into two categories: oil and gas and other companies. But other companies would include all of the service sector, financial sector, manufacturing sector, etc., would also include the petrochemical sector. So we've had quite significant receipts from the petrochemical sector in the first half of the year, and taxes on incomes and profits has exceeded expectations by $790 million. And that is why, when you look at the overall outturn, even though we've experienced a lower VAT collection because it's a net figure, even though we've experienced lower royalty collections, we have a considerable increase in taxes on incomes and profits. So as I said, we are not doing too badly. And I now want to explain why we are doing well in terms of revenue from the energy sector. This needs to be hammered home. Over the last 5 or 6 years, the Prime Minister and the current Minister of Energy and the former one went all over the world negotiating with the oil and gas majors who do business in Trinidad and Tobago. And it is as a result of the efforts of those honourable gentlemen that we have been able to negotiate prices for revenue from natural gas that are not a function of the Henry Hub price that most of the so-called experts in Trinidad and Tobago like to refer to. Our netback prices for gas from which we get our revenue as a country are now based, again I want to repeat, because of the hard work of the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy, are based on 3 benchmarks: Henry Hub, American; NBP, European benchmark; and JKM, Japanese benchmark. And if one looks at Henry Hub right now, you might see Henry Hub is $3, whatever it is, $2.50. But if you look at the NBP price in Europe, $12, $15. If you look at the JKM price, Japan, Korea, you will see it's also $12 to $15. And when you take all those together, that is why we are getting these kind of natural gas netback prices of $6, $7, $5, and so on. Whereas when you look only at Henry Hub, you will see $2.30. And I think that point needs to be made over and over. If that work had not been done by the Prime Minister and the Minister of Energy, we would be in big, big trouble as a country. I have about 17 minutes more, Mr. Thank you. Now, let me move along. I authorized today a press release from the Ministry of Finance, Inland Revenue Division, informing businesses that application forms for value-added tax bonds are now available online. And this would have been released to the media today. And VAT bonds will be issued with a 3-year tenor at a fixed interest rate of 3.15% per annum. The press release also indicates that only applicants being owed refunds in excess of $250,000 would be eligible to receive VAT bonds. Refunds of $250,000 or less will be paid in cash during the months of May and June of 2023. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are going to clear off every single outstanding VAT refund that is of the order of $250,000 or less in cash in the months of May and June. And that is because we are committed to the small and medium enterprise sector. And again, this is a subject of uninformed commentary. I am just amazed when people talk. The last set of VAT bonds that we issued 3 years ago, we carefully selected the interest rate and the tenor of 3 years so that persons who wish to get cash immediately could go to any commercial bank and cash their bonds at 100 cents on the dollar. That was widely publicized, widely publicized. Hundreds, I dare say thousands, of persons in receipt of these bonds were able to cash them in at the commercial bank for 100 cents on the dollar. In other words, they didn't lose 1 cent. They could cash them in for the full amount at par. Today, after consulting with the Debt Management Division of the Ministry of Finance and doing my own consultation with the commercial banking sector, we have chosen a fixed interest rate of 3.15% for the VAT bonds, and I can advise those who wish to inform themselves that the current yield curve rate for 3-year government paper is 2.9%, and therefore the rate of 3.15% is above the current borrowing rate for the government, and therefore the commercial banks have confirmed to me and the debt management unit that the bonds that we will be issuing, the $3 billion in VAT bonds, can be converted at the commercial banks at 100 cents on the dollar. So I am saying that because people need to pay attention. I saw a newspaper article when I mentioned the fact that Cabinet had approved the issuance of $3 billion in VAT bonds. I saw all kind of old talk. What kind of interest rate? Was he lent? Was he discount? There was no discount. None. It has been priced so people can get the whole 100% of the VAT bond in cash. And that's exactly what happened the last time, 3 years ago in Trinidad and Tobago. Moving on now, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I think I also need to dispel some old talk. You know, it's amazing. You know, when one of the rating agencies gives a negative outlook for Trinidad and Tobago, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, etc. You know, there are people in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, including honourable members opposite, who jump for joy. They jump for joy if an international credit rating agency gives Trinidad and Tobago a negative outlook. Or if, on the other hand, in one of the annual consultations with the International Monetary Fund, because as members of the International Monetary Fund for 50 years, one of the many member countries, over 170 countries that are members of the International Monetary Fund, when you join that organization, you agree to certain articles of agreement. One of the articles of agreement is called Article 4. And Article 4 mandates a country to have annual consultations with the technocrats from the International Monetary Fund, who would come to Trinidad and Tobago and have meetings, not just with the government, but with the private sector, with the Chamber of Commerce, the TTMA, the oil companies, the opposition, everybody, They would come to Trinidad and Tobago for 2 weeks and have an intensive, comprehensive examination of our fiscal accounts, our energy sector performance, oil and gas production, revenues from petroleum. They would look at what is happening in the central bank. They will have meetings with the Central Statistical Office to look at the production of economic data and so on, over an intensive 2-week period. And then they produce something called an Article 4 consultation report. And when, Mr. Deputy Speaker, these Article 4 reports are published and there's something negative in it, members opposite and other people jump for joy. But you know, when the IMF publishes a positive Article 4 report, as it did on the 5th of May 2023, just 5 days ago, they vex. They all vex. They're going inside, they're looking in every word, in every semicolon, every full stop, every bracket to see what they could find that is negative. And sometimes, when they can't find anything, Mr. Deputy Speaker, they make it up. And I had the misfortune.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 48-6, please. Accusing the members of the opposition of fabricating and making up information to present into the public space. Mr. Deputy Speaker, ask for a ruling on this. Okay. Thanks.
Overrule. Proceed.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I don't know what they're so jumpy about. I wasn't talking about them yet. I am referring to a particular individual at the university who, among others of his colleagues, is always trying to pour cold water on positive news for Trinidad and Tobago. I am not referring to honourable members opposite yet. And I want to read from the IMF Executive Board 2023. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is wrong with them? Could you ask them to stop muttering, please, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Well, I hope they will stop. On May the 5th, Mr. Deputy Speaker, on May the 5th, the IMF Executive Board published the Article 4 consultation report with Trinidad and Tobago for 2023. And I read from the official release on the IMF's website, dated May the 5th, 2023. Trinidad and Tobago's economic activity is recovering, supported by higher global energy prices and, most importantly, the rebound of the non-energy sector. Real gross domestic product, real, not nominal. Mr. Deputy Speaker, please, can I ask you to ask members to be silent?
Again, members, we know what the standing order says with regards to the decorum. Each member will have the opportunity to speak. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Real GDP is estimated to have expanded by 2.5% in 2022. Now, the interesting thing about that is that when we met with the mission team at the end of its 2-week intensive mission, and they gave us their findings, the mission chief told us that he was a little surprised to tell us that the IMF's estimate of GDP growth in fiscal 2022 was higher than the estimate by the government of Trinidad and Tobago. We estimated GDP growth in 2022 to be 2.0%. That's what I put in the budget documents. But the IMF, after intense interrogation, is of the view that it should really be 2.5%. But what is more interesting about this statement by the IMF Executive Board, they say the economic recovery is expected to gain broad-based momentum in 2023. Inflation is projected to slow to 4.5% by the end of 2023, and to continue declining with international prices. When one goes into the report itself, they go on to say, the authority's commitment to balancing the budget over the medium term is prudent and welcome. And they made many other positive statements. I don't have sufficient time to read out all of them. But what was interesting is in the report, they have a table. And the table is entitled Trinidad and Tobago Selected Social and Economic Indicators 2017 to 2023. And they estimate our GDP per capita in 2021 to be $17,458 US. It's now over 20,000 US dollars in 2023. And they have a table which gives their calculations for gross domestic product. Their estimate for 2022, as I indicated earlier, 2.5%. And in this table, they state that their estimate for 2023 is positive 3.2%. Yet I had to read some character saying that according to the data in this report, the economy is going to decline in 2023. And that is what we have to deal with in this country. Nonsense at the highest level. Let me move on to what is in the report from the Central Statistical Office. When one looks at what has been published on the CSO website for September 2022, because our Central Statistical Office has improved significantly over the last several years, the last 2 years in particular, and the IMF did make that comment in its report, indicating that, and I quote, the quality, timeliness, and coverage of statistics has improved. And when one goes to the Central Statistical Office website, one will see that for the third quarter, when one looks at the third quarter of 2022, actual figures, not estimates, the economy actually grew by 3% real GDP in the first 9 months of 2022. And we expect to get the end of year figures, December figures, in the very near future. The international standard is that this data should be available within a 6-month period. So expect in June that we will get the fourth quarter data for 2022, and then we'll see exactly what the growth was for 2022, but we expect it to be in excess of our own estimate of 2%. What is also very, very interesting when you look at the IMF report, and this is required reading as far as I'm concerned for people who really want to understand what is going on with the Trinidad and Tobago economy. They have looked at the contribution of the non-energy sector to our economy, non-oil sector, and they estimate that the contribution of the non-energy sector in 2022 was 69.4%. In other words, more than 2/3 of our economy is now coming from the non-energy sector. And the energy sector was estimated by the IMF to have contributed 30.6% of GDP. As we go forward, the IMF is projecting that in 2023...
We have approximately 2 minutes.
2 more minutes? Thank you very much. I'm nearly done. That in 2023, the non-energy sector will contribute as much as 73% of our GDP. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the increase in the appropriation is significant, and we in finance are looking at it. We have some concerns. We would have preferred not to have to supplement the appropriation, but we think these supplementations are very, very important. And one of the main reasons why we are supplementing the appropriation in so many ministries is that we've had some very hard years in the last 7 years. And therefore, much of the supplementation is designed to clear off a backlog of bills that have accumulated, arrears, money owed to suppliers and contractors over the last 7 years. And we thought it was appropriate to do that at this time because cash is the lifeblood of industry. So we felt it was appropriate to increase the appropriation by this $3.8 billion. As I said, much of this is intended to pay off outstanding bills and arrears to suppliers and contractors who have been very, very patient for the last 7 years. I also wish to indicate that together with the VAT bonds of $3 billion and the cash bonds that we have already issued and will issue,
Honourable Member.
I beg to move.